Well, my name's Dave Swan, and this is Chris Louie from the Labor History Committee, District 751, and we're interviewing Mr. James Hershey, retiree, District 751, and this is October 1st, 2010. How you doing today, Jim?
I'm doing fine until you said retiree. I'm a person of leisure.
Okay, excuse me, person of leisure. So, Jim, can you please tell us about your family and where you grew up at?
I have a wife, and I have 8 children, 6 male and 2 female. I was born and raised in Muskogee, Oklahoma. I think maybe one of these days you hear this song by Merle Haggard, Okie from Muskogee. That's me. And I grew up there. I stayed there till I was 22 years old. Actually, I stayed there until I was 20 years old and went in the service, spent 3 years in the service. And then got out of service. I went back home for about a year and a half and went to college. And I came back out, I got married, came back out here, and I've been here ever since.
Oh, so that's fantastic. Jim, is there anybody in your family that was union or any family members that were union?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
My father worked on the railroad. He belonged to Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters.
Wow.
My brother is next to, and I'm next to. He worked on the railroad and he belonged to the Machinist Union.
Fantastic. So, Jim, I understand that you played a little bit of football back in Texas College as well as in the military. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, football is a sport that I love, but I don't watch it anymore. But I played from high school. I got me a deal to go to Texas College. I went to Texas College. I spent a year there. And that's one of the mistakes I made. Then I left there and I went into the service. I played service ball. After I got out of service, I went back and I played college ball at the Northeastern Oklahoma State in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And after that, once I started working for Boeing, before I started working for Boeing, I played semi-pro ball around here.
Wow, that sounds fantastic, Jim. Jim, how did you come to work at the Boeing Company, and when did this take place? What year was this?
The Boeing Company was recruiting in '65 because they had just started it was going to start the 737. I was living in Yakima at the time, and I went into unemployment office because I had made this line up to leave Yakima. And so I walked in and talked to one of the recruiters, and I filled out an application, and he says, well, we need somebody like you, so I come to work for Boeing.
In 1965?
1966.
1966, okay. Could you tell us what shop you worked in and what it was like then, back when you hired in 1966?
I went in, as they used to call it then, the jig shop. It was a tooling shop. And we were building the 737. We started with the panels, upper and lower panels, rear spar, front spar, and we also assembled the wing. I helped build all those tools for the 737.
Okay. Jim, can you tell us some information about the tooling breakdown man or the lead at DC when you were a lead man there? Can you talk about that a little bit about it?
Well, the lead man, as it's called, at the time that I spent there before things happened, the lead man did all the breakdown work in the shop. He also assigned jobs to the people that were working with him. He also would make sure that the jobs were done on schedule. You had a schedule to follow, and they tried to make sure that you maintain the schedule so that you could either be on schedule or ahead of schedule because it was saving money.
That sounds fantastic. Can you talk about some of the involvement that you had in the union and who some of the people were that influenced you early in the union involvement? And what was some of the first union involvement experiences that you can recall?
Well, the first experience I recall is that Wayburn Gordon, who used to be a union rep here, was the first one that I talked to in the shop because he had that area at the time, and he would come in and we would talk from time to time. And he was the one that I got to know real well. There was others here that as I started coming to the office and talking to the other business reps and people in the office, it was nice. I decided early on, because at that time, when you hired in Boeing, you had a decision to make whether to join the union or not join, because at that time you didn't have to belong.
Right.
And the thing is, we in the union had this contract with the Boeing company, but yet and still we had to take care of the people that didn't join. And then the people that joined, they paid their dues to the union while others got free ride.
Could you recall some of the people that influenced you to get more involved in the union as time went on?
The most important one was the Wayburn.
Excuse me?
The Wayburn Garden was the most important one. Okay. He was the first one that made the contact.
Wow.
And after that, everything fell into place.
Okay. Could you talk about a little bit how it was at the Boeing Company when it was an open shop?
Yeah. Well, like I say, there were, let's say, a few blacks in the shop. There were no women at that time in the shop. And you also worked most of the time with the lead man, and if the lead man was good, you had a gravy job. If he wasn't, you were in trouble. See? But it just depended on how people perceived whether there was nepotism going on or what in the Boeing Company. The Boeing Company, when I first started going there, it was named happily called the Lazy Bee.
The Lazy Bee.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, could you also talk a little bit about what the first strike you were involved in and what roles you played as well in that strike and what year it was possibly, if you can recall?
I can't recall the year, but
okay.
Whenever they went on strike, I was down here at Union Hall. We walked picket line, did whatever was possible to make sure that we had a successful negotiation.
Jim, could you also talk, compare a little bit about what you think back then, what the strikes were compared to today's strikes and how you see the difference of them?
Well, to compare those in the old, then and now, there's a bit difference because a lot of people don't understand that this is a way of making a good living. If you organize, you have a nice union supporting you, and one that is batting for the person that's in there for the right way, you can have a good life in some of the places. Now sometimes when things are good, it's real good. When it gets bad, it's bad. But it should be like going home. It's what you do in the service of the union and the company that makes the impression on the people.
Fantastic.